The MTC Report, the news behind the news with journalist Mark Taylor-Canfield. We offer you independent voices and underreported stories about topics you won't hear anywhere else. Join us as we delve into the deeper issues behind the news stories of the day on the MTC Report.
The enforcement of those laws.
The senator is reminded that it is a violation of Rule 19 of the standing rules of the Senate.
She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
So is it the contention of the chair that under the rules of the Senate, I am not allowed to accurately describe public views of Senator Sessions, public positions of Senator Sessions, quote, public statements of Senator Sessions?
Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, I am surprised that the words of Coretta Scott King are not suitable for debate in the United States Senate.
The MTC Report.
You got drunk.
Hi, this is Mark Taylor-Canfield, and this is the MTC Report. I'm a weekly guest journalist on the Jeff Santos Show, broadcasting nationally from Boston, and I've written at the Huffington Post. I blog at Daily Kos. I'm a regular columnist at the Capitol Hill Times, and I'm contributing editor for the Democracy Watch News. The MTC Report is my effort to further push forward freedom of the press in the United States, and that's one issue that Democracy Watch News really focuses on. I've worked with the Committee to Protect Journalists and Reporters Without Borders and other groups on this issue. As I've reported before, the United States was ranked 41st in the world in terms of press freedom by Reporters Without Borders in 2016, and I know we can and must do much better. First of all, this is what a reporter and a musician looks like after several days of no sleep and constant work, so forgive me if I'm looking a little ragged. But the political sands have been shifting so quickly in the last few months, especially the last few weeks, that it's been difficult to keep track of all these new alignments. But suffice it to say that the Democrats have taken on the attitude of a resistance movement now, and the U.S. corporate media has suddenly decided that it must actually do its job, and at least try to stand up for freedom of the press, and maybe actually hold our political leaders accountable for some of their actions.
Order. He was doing it to make sure Americans were safe. The order, the U.S. code is crystal clear on this. I think I've read it for like 3 days in a row, and it can't be any clearer how much authority it gives the president to do what he can to keep it safe. He's concerned that he's doing what he can to keep this country safe, and there's been a lot of activity to stand in the way. So I'm not sure how many more times I can read the code to you, but 8 U.S. Code 1182.
Me talking about it is not how the judicial process works.
Thank you. You've asked the question now 8 times.
One more. I'd like to ask you about a different set of comments that have been made.
I understand. Thank you. Go ahead.
About a different set of comments that have been made, Sean, also from Kellyanne Conway earlier this week.
Let him go.
Earlier from this week, you said this is in context of the Nordstrom and not about what she was counseled about, but about something she said to CNN earlier this week, is that the president doesn't comment on everything. And so I want to contrast the president's repeated statements about Nordstrom with a lack of comments about some other things, including, for example, the attack on Quebec Mosque and other similar environments. Why is the president, when he chooses to...
Do you know, hold on, before, because you just brought that up, I literally stand at this podium and opened a briefing a couple days ago about the president expressing his condolences. I literally opened the briefing about it. So for you to sit there and say... I know. So why are you asking why he didn't do it when I literally stood here and did it?
Statement.
I don't understand what you're asking.
Kellyanne's comment were about that the president doesn't have time to tweet about everything.
Right.
He's tweeting about this.
Right.
He's not tweeting about something else.
I came out here and actually spoke about it and said the president spoke.
The president's time.
What are you? You're equating me addressing the nation here in a tweet? I mean, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Okay, this is silly. Okay, next. Okay, thank you. You've asked your question. Thank you.
Does that not diminish the language that you're using?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
You got drunk. You got drunk.
In this report, I'm focusing in on a few incidents that seem to stand out amid all the protests and the clamor. Senator Elizabeth Warren was shut down. She was censored on the floor of the U.S. Senate by Republican members who did not want to hear her read a letter written by Coretta Scott King, the wife of civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. This has led to a whole new resurgence in favor of Senator Warren from some of the members of her own party, the Democrats, who have in the past been trying to sabotage her efforts to promote progressive ideals. So she is very popular in the blue states, and Senator Lindsey Graham recently claimed that she is, quote, clearly running for the nomination in 2020.
You got drunk.
They are mothers, daughters, sisters, fathers, sons, and brothers.
Mr. President.
They are...
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
The senators impugn the motives and conduct of our colleague from Alabama as warned by the chair. Senator Warren, quote, said Senator Sessions has used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens. I call the senator to order under the provisions of Rule 19.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, I am surprised that the words of Coretta Scott King are not suitable for debate in the United States Senate.
Here's her, and I'd first ask consent to put the letter in the record.
Is there objection? Without objection.
This letter starts on March the 19th, 1986. It's a letter from Coretta Scott King. Martin Luther King Jr. Center is at the top of the letterhead here for nonviolent social change. And she's writing a letter to Strom Thurmond. And she says, I write to express my sincere opposition to the confirmation of Jefferson B. Sessions as a federal district court judge for the Southern District of Alabama. My professional and personal roots in Alabama are deep and lasting. Anyone who has the power of his office as United States Attorney to intimidate and chill the free exercise of the ballot of the citizens should not be elevated to our courts. Mr. Sessions has used the awesome powers of his office in a shabby attempt to intimidate and frighten elderly black voters. For this reprehensible conduct, he should not be rewarded with a federal judgeship. I regret that a long-standing commitment prevents me from appearing in person to testify against this nominee. However, I have attached a copy of my statement opposing Mr. Sessions' confirmation, and I request that my statement as well as this letter be made a part of the hearing record. I do sincerely urge you to oppose the confirmation of Mr. Sessions. And there's a carbon copy of this to Senator Joe Biden. This happened in March of 1986, and Coretta Scott King is speaking out against Jeff Sessions, who was at the time the United States Attorney, and he was going to be promoted as a federal judge. We all know the history. He was not promoted as a federal judge.
A person who has exhibited hostility to the enforcement of these laws and thus to the exercise
of those rights by black people should not be elevated to the federal bench.
I gave you all my money, but you still wanted more. I said I love you, honey. You just wanted to the door. You wanted me to stay home and help you with the chores, and I said, baby, I think I'm getting bored. You took my favorite jacket, then you chased my friends away, and now I'm here all alone, and I'm alone. I guess I'll stay. Well, why'd you have to cheat me out of everything I own? You took my record collection and you kicked me out my home. So way down the river. You got drunk. That's right. I said.
Well, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have at least attempted to represent the working class and the poor in this country. But meanwhile, out on the streets, the protests continue, and all kinds of issues associated with the Trump regime are being addressed, including his immigration policies. So the following footage was shot in Phoenix, Arizona.
efforts to split families apart in our communities here in Arizona, and we want everybody in America to know and around the world that this kind of family separation, this kind of junk leadership is not going to stand.
I'm Lupita's daughter.
So that's your mom in there?
Yeah. That's my mom in there.
No,
No, I knew that we are gonna keep on fighting until she comes home with us.
What's the message you want to send to your mom?
That I love her so much, and that she needs to stay strong, and that I have faith that she's gonna come out with us. Yeah, because she's not a bad person, and every year after year, she always checked in, and this never happened. And yeah.
I'm pretty nervous, but I'm trying to stay strong and positive. We're out here with our community trying to stop this van from leaving. It's hard not to cry, but we have to stay strong. I told her that I love her and that everything's going to be okay.
El proceso a deportación de la gente que está dentro de este van. Te queremos mucho.
Just keep doing it, and you're gonna get tired. I got tired for a while after the election, but we have to pull each other up, and we have to rise, and vote.
Yes, it is kind of telling that only 47% of registered voters actually voted, and only 25% actually elected Trump. So between that and the Electoral College, it's very difficult to explain to people in other parts of the world that we have a democracy.
Yeah, it is,
Even as a reporter, Walter Cronkite was one of my heroes. In his autobiography, he questions whether we have a democracy. When you have that low of a voter turnout compared to other countries, it's pretty hard to say that. But thank you so much, so I appreciate it.
Don't go anywhere. The MTC Report with Mark Taylor-Canfield continues next.
So here's another story that I've been focusing on, and that is the fact that the Seattle City Council voted to divest $3 billion from Wells Fargo on the same day that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers approved construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline by granting the builders a 30-year easement. So it's official. The Seattle City Council has voted 9-0 to divest $3 billion from the city's money from Wells Fargo. And you can read my article at Truth Out on this. I've been covering this story for them and did quite a in-depth research project on this, so you can check it out there with lots of hyperlinks and original documents and first-hand sources to read. But the Seattle City Council chambers erupted in celebration with shouts of approval after the vote on Tuesday, February 7th.
Sawan. Aye. Thanks, John. Aye. Burgess. Aye. Gonzalez. Aye. President Carroll.
Aye.
council members Shama Sawant, Tim Burgess, and Deborah Juarez co-sponsored the new ordinance, which is an expansion of the city's fair business practices policy. So as of now, Chapter 20.46 of the Seattle Municipal Code now directs Mayor Ed Murray and Fred Podesta, the Director of Finance and Administrative Services, to cease renewal of Seattle's contract for bank depository services with Wells Fargo. The law also prohibits any new investments in Wells Fargo securities for at least 3 years. Council members Sawant and Lisa Herbold cited financial malpractice by Wells Fargo, as well as the bank's loan support for the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Whatever is deemed an unfair business practice, or whatever offends our sense of justice and accountability, will not be tolerated. In November of 2011, City Council passed Resolution 31337 to protect the peaceful and lawful exercise of the First Amendment rights of Occupy Seattle and others. A subsequent review of our investment policies took place, and it was stated, the city will review its banking and investment policies and practices to ensure that public funds are invested in responsible financial institutions that support our community. In December of 2012, as my sister Pam shared, City Council passed Resolution 31420, proclaiming Seattle as a human rights city. And some of you may wonder, what does that have to do with today? It has to do with this. It is our commitment to human rights as stated, to constitute an important framework of human rights principles for cities to strengthen and improve the impact of laws and policies on local communities, as well as provide a model for municipal governments to translate and implement universal human rights principles at the local level. And today, that is water.
I give you all my money, but you still wanted more. I said I love you, honey. You just wanted to the door. You wanted me to stay home and help you with the chores, and I said, baby, I think I'm getting bored. You took my favorite jacket, then you chased my friends away, and now I'm here all alone, and I don't know. I guess I'll stay.
Council's decision to divest city funds from Wells Fargo has been applauded by the Standing Rock Sioux tribe and their supporters, who are facing serious new challenges in their opposition to the DAPL. On February 7th, the same day that the City Council voted to divest $3 billion from Wells Fargo in protest, Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army Paul Kramer notified members of Congress that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has granted a 30-year easement to Dakota Access, allowing the pipeline to cross government-owned land in Morton County and Emmons County, North Dakota. Citing Donald Trump's January 24th executive order entitled Presidential Memorandum regarding construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline, Kramer announced that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers intends to waive its policy to wait 14 days after congressional notification before granting the easement, which is, under this law, 30 U.S.C. 185 U.S. Code. Bypassing the usual 2-week waiting period, the U.S. Army's Corps said it was willing to execute the easement within 24 hours. Well, meanwhile, the Seattle City Council was building a case for divestment from Wells Fargo over this and other issues. You can also see some of my photographs posted at Truth Out that I took that day that the City Council made this vote, with the support of everyone in the chambers, which was overflowing with people. There's also some video there from the Seattle channel, so you can watch the entire event. But here's some background information for those of you who want to know the truth about Wells Fargo. The Securities and Exchange Commission reports that Wells Fargo has supplied $347 million in credit to companies involved in the Dakota Access Pipeline. Wells Fargo maintains that it's only one out of 17 financial institutions helping to finance the pipeline, and that its loan represents only 5% of the total $3.8 billion cost of the project. Energy Transfer Partners, which operates 70,000 miles of pipeline, that's on their own website they say this, in addition to the DPL, they have a $3.7 billion line of credit with Wells Fargo. So during a public comment period before the vote by the Seattle City Council, Standing Rock Sioux tribal member Olivia Onefeather told the council, "The people of Standing Rock are friends at Standing Rock. The world needs us to stand up and speak out against these injustices. We must protect our natural and life-giving resources for our beautiful sacred children and our beautiful Mother Earth." Then Muckleshoot tribal member Rachel Heaton addressed the full council, thanking them for their vote on the issue. She said, "Yes, there have been setbacks. Yes, there's been resistance, but look where we are today, on the right side of change. At a time when greed and money are motivators, we're saying no, they aren't. In a time when people are saying we can't live without fossil fuels, we're saying there are options, and yes, we can. At a time when media controls what we see, we're saying, let's change that, and here's a real story." So while tribal members from Alaska and Washington state spoke to the council, the city hall chambers were filled to capacity with people carrying signs that said "Ally" to show their support for the council and solidarity with Native American tribes. As tribal members sang and drummed a song of thanks, Heaton presented all of the 9 city council members with traditional ceremonial gifts to honor them for their vote in favor of divestment from Wells Fargo. Seattle City Council member Deborah Juarez is a member of the Blackfeet Nation. She spoke to the overflowing crowd in council chambers before the final vote, saying, "Seattle has a long and proud history of placing our social policy values above the pursuit of pure profit. In December 2012, Seattle passed Resolution 31420, proclaiming Seattle is a human rights city. It is our commitment to human rights as stated." Juarez cited current UN policies stating that access to clean water is a basic human right, and she argued that the water protectors at Standing Rock are supporting international human rights resolutions. Improper financial conduct and financing of immigration detention are 2 other issues that the City Council brought up. Councilmember Lisa Herbold's statement was about her amendment to the updated Fair Business Practices policy, and that refers to claims of improper conduct by Wells Fargo. The amendment says, quote, "On September 4th, 2016, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau placed Wells Fargo under a consent order related to its unfair consumer practices. In the order, the CFPB found that Wells Fargo opened, among other potentially fraudulent accounts, at least 1.5 million deposit accounts that may not have been authorized and that may have been funded through simulated funding or by transferring funds from consumers' existing accounts without their knowledge or consent." The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau also found that the bank had charged $2 million in fraudulent deposit account fees and more than $400,000 in fraudulent credit card-related fees. In December 2016, federal regulators imposed restrictions on the bank for its failure to prepare for potential economic crises or bankruptcy in the future. So as a result, Wells Fargo was blocked from the establishment of any new international banking businesses and prohibited from buying any non-bank subsidiaries. The bank was required to provide new financial plans to federal regulators by March 31st, 2017. Wells Fargo currently owns 80 subsidiaries and funds in the United States and in 8 other countries. This financial giant, which benefited from taxpayer-funded federal bailouts in 2008, has also been accused of unfair labor practices. Seattle City Council Bill 11905 states, quote, "Since September 2016, former Wells Fargo employees have filed a multi-billion-dollar class action lawsuit claiming that they were wrongfully terminated for failing to meet unreasonable quotas." Herbold also points out that Wells Fargo has played a leading role in financing the debts of the GEO Group, which owns and operates the Northwest Detention Center. Lisa Herbold, the city council member from Seattle's amendment to this new bill, refers to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Facility as, quote, "a private detention center located in Tacoma, Washington, and utilized to detain immigrants and refugees from all over the state, including Seattle, who are undergoing removal proceedings. She referred to a report by the group called In the Public Interest, and their report is called The Banks That Finance Private Prison Companies. A recent Seattle rally against Donald Trump's immigration ban brought an estimated 20,000 residents out into the streets. So during the city council meeting before the vote, Lisa Herbold spoke about the mistreatment of Standing Rock water protectors by law enforcement agencies, including the use of rubber bullets, water cannons, pepper spray, and tear gas on protesters. Storyteller and flutist Paul Wagner of Vancouver Island from the Saanich tribe told the council, quote, "The time has come to say no to corporations such as Wells Fargo that fund this form of discrimination and abuse." So if you go to the Seattle City channel, the Seattle government channel, you can actually watch this meeting as it was recorded live, and you can see the reaction to the people who had packed the council chambers, to see the reaction to the vote and by the native members.
The MTC Report, the news behind the news with journalist Mark Taylor-Canfield. We offer you independent voices and underreported stories about topics you won't hear anywhere else. Join us as we delve into the deeper issues behind the news stories of the day on the MTC Report.
Don't let her in the public schools right now. Come on, man. Do not let her in.
Money to senators and find your way to the position. You should be so proud of yourself. Go back. Shame! 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 Shame!
Wow, very aggressive use of words there. This is a complete victory for the state of Washington. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, in a unanimous decision, effectively granted everything we sought. We are a nation of laws. And as I have said, as we have said, from day one, that those laws apply to everybody in our country. And that includes the President of the United States. Throughout this litigation, the President has asserted that his actions in signing this executive order are unreviewable. Here's what the Ninth Circuit had to say about that. There is no precedent to support this claimed unreviewability, which runs contrary to the fundamental structure of our constitutional democracy. We respect that the President has broad authority when it comes to issuing executive orders, but they still have to follow the Constitution. That's the bottom line. The President does have a choice. He can continue to fight this, or he can tear up this executive order and start over. I would strongly encourage him to consider the latter course of action.
Don't go anywhere. The MTC Report with Mark Taylor-Canfield continues next.
On the issue of last evening with Elizabeth Warren, Coretta Scott King, these words, I want to get your reaction to these words that were not allowed. Mr. Sessions has used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens in the district he now seeks to serve as a federal judge. And she's basically saying that Sessions has an indifference towards criminal violations of civil rights laws. What do you say to that?
Well, obviously, we have a lot of respect for her and the sacrifices that she made, and the sacrifices that, frankly, she endured in her life. But I would respectfully disagree with her assessment of Senator Sessions then and now.
And it would be so great for our justice system if they would be able to read a statement and do what's right. And that has to do with the security of our country, which is so important. And that's why it was done. And it couldn't have been written any more precisely. It's not like, oh, gee, we wish it were written better. It was written beautifully. But now we're in an area that, let's just say, they are interpreting things differently than probably 100% of the people in this room.
This is Mark Taylor-Canfield, and this is the MTC Report.
President Trump said he may issue a brand new travel ban next week rather than wait for the courts to make a final ruling on his current ban. Mr. Trump says speed is essential to national security. His ban on refugees and on several predominantly Muslim nations was placed on hold last week by a federal judge, and Mr. Trump lost a second round yesterday in a court of appeals. Chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford is following the case.
We also have a lot of other options, including just filing a brand new order.
Aboard Air Force One today, President Trump vowed he would soon impose tougher screening procedures and possibly a new executive order, adding to comments he made earlier in the day at the White House.
We'll be doing something very rapidly having to do with additional security for our country. You'll be seeing that sometime next week.
The federal appeals court ruling kept Mr. Trump's executive order on hold while courts consider whether it's legal for him to impose a temporary ban on refugees and immigrants from 7 predominantly Muslim nations. The Obama administration had previously identified those 7 countries as of most concern for terrorism, and Mr. Trump said the temporary ban was necessary while national security officials reviewed Mr. Obama's vetting procedures. Sources say one possible option, stepping up that review even without a travel ban in place and coming up with tougher new vetting measures. That would make much of the executive order unnecessary, avoiding legal problems ahead. Benjamin Wittes of the Brookings Institution.
There is a concern that the reckless manner in which President Trump did this order and the litigation that ensued will cause the courts to put limits on perfectly legitimate authorities.
Now, there is a chance the entire California-based federal appeals court could review Thursday's ruling by the 3 judges, and Mr. Trump could also ask the Supreme Court to intervene. But, Scott, at this preliminary phase, that's unlikely.
Jan Crawford in the Washington newsroom. Thanks.
Of those laws.
The senator is reminded that it is a violation of Rule 19 of the standing rules of the Senate.
She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
Nancy, as we saw in your piece, Senator Warren silenced under Rule 19. For those unfamiliar, what exactly is it?
And I think probably most people are unfamiliar with Rule 19 because it's almost never enforced. Essentially what it says is that senators cannot impugn the motives of their fellow senators when they're speaking on the Senate floor. The reason it typically isn't used is that A, senators often hold themselves to that standard, and B, on the rare occasion when senators have crossed the line before, it hasn't been enforced, which is why Democrats are arguing that this crossed the line, that it was arbitrary, that it was a crackdown, that that Senator Warren was being silenced. Republicans say they gave her numerous warnings, so this wasn't an offhanded comment that she made and then she moved on. She was criticizing Senator Sessions in a way that they felt violated Rule 19. They told her several times that they felt she was in violation, and eventually they laid down the law and held this vote. that essentially said that she cannot speak for the remainder of the debate over Senator Sessions and his nomination to be Attorney General until the confirmation vote, which is expected to come tonight.
And again, she was reading the letter from Coretta Scott King, which she then, adding to the drama, took just outside the Senate chambers and continued to read on a Facebook Live session. And so, as the drama continues here, Nancy, are we anticipating any actual drama with the vote?
No, I think all the drama is probably going to be confined to this debate because so far there are no Republicans who have indicated that they are not going to vote for Senator Sessions. So you don't have a nail biter the same way that you had over Betsy DeVos to be Education Secretary, where 2 Republicans defected and Democrats were trying desperately to get one more to vote against her in order to sink her nomination. In this case, all Republican senators are standing by their fellow Republican senator, and many of them have said that they don't agree with him on all issues, but they feel that President Trump has the right to fill his cabinet as he sees fit.
You know, Nancy, yesterday you said that you could not remember a collective series of cabinet picks facing such contentious nomination battles. But as we now see these draw to a close, largely along party lines, what do you think the long-term impact is here?
Well, Democrats will argue that there has been a value to all of this debate, to their stalling tactics, to these all-nighters, even if they weren't able to defeat the nominees in the end, because they feel that they have shined a light on nominees who they feel are outside the mainstream and some of those nominees' positions. And they think that when those nominees are confirmed, when they actually hold those roles in the cabinet, that Democrats will have more public opinion on their side than they would have otherwise to try to put the brakes on nominees if they try to do things that Democrats, both in the Senate and in the public, don't agree with. So, for example, if Betsy DeVos were to try to send federal dollars outside of the public education system and make a play for vouchers to become more common, Democrats have already, they believe, laid the groundwork to oppose that. But the reality is that they knew from the very beginning that they probably were not going to be able to defeat any of these nominees, just slow them down, and that appears to be what's playing out.
And that certainly is playing out indeed. Nancy Cordes there on Capitol Hill. As always, Nancy, we do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Back in 1986, Senator Sessions back then had been the US Attorney, and he was rejected to be a federal judge. And one of the things that was important in both Republicans and Democrats deciding to vote against him was a letter from Coretta Scott King to the Judiciary Committee. Tonight, I wanted to read that letter, and Senator Mitch McConnell and the Republicans came to the floor to shut me down for reading that letter. So right now what I'd like to do is, outside the Senate, I just want to read the letter. Mr. Sessions has used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens in the district he now seeks to serve as a federal judge. This simply cannot be allowed to happen. Mr. Sessions' conduct as a U.S. attorney, from his politically motivated voting fraud prosecutions to his indifference toward criminal violations of civil rights laws, indicates that he lacks the temperament, fairness, and judgment to be a federal judge. I believe his confirmation would have a devastating effect, not only on the judicial system in Alabama, but also on the progress we have made everywhere toward fulfilling my husband's dream that he envisioned over 20 years ago. That was what Coretta Scott King said back in 1986 about Jeff Sessions. I think it is relevant.
President Trump nominated given the choice that was before us, by far, Donald Trump was the better choice. By far. When Kellyanne Conway said what she said about buying that particular product, that was wrong, wrong, wrong. I called it out. I called Elijah Cummings, who's the ranking member on my committee.
Mark Taylor-Canfield, and this is the MTC Report.
Is free to speak his mind. Where has this outrage been for the last 100 years? There has been
the Obama administration or any previous administration. I'm talking about this president.
I understand, and the president
has
the part of the reason the president got elected is because he speaks his mind. He doesn't hold it back. He's authentic, and he's not going to sit back. I think when he feels very passionately about something as much as the executive order, he was doing it to make sure Americans were safe. The order, the U.S. code is crystal clear on. What are you? You're equating me addressing the nation here in a tweet? I mean, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Okay, this is silly. Okay, next. Okay, thank you. You've asked your question. Thank you.
Does that not diminish the language that you're using?
Go ahead.
So, is it the contention of the chair that under the rules of the Senate, I am not allowed to accurately describe public views of Senator Sessions, public positions of Senator Sessions, quote, public statements of Senator Sessions?
future for themselves and for their family.
Don't go anywhere. The MTC Report with Mark Taylor-Canfield continues next.
How have you been feeling since the inauguration? And has this event helped you feel a little better, being around so many people? How is that?
Well, it was just yesterday, so frankly, I didn't watch. I read the, what's it called? I read the speech. I didn't watch the televised live version, but I read what he had to say, and I appreciate some of it, and I appreciate the calls to unity in whatever way that he chose to phrase them. However, I want to see action and not talk. And yeah, I mean, I feel hopeful seeing all of these people out here in such large numbers. I feel hopeful, but I hope that what's happening here today goes beyond today, and that it's not just about making a cool sign and marching in the streets and shouting some songs and feeling good about yourself for this moment that is very fiery. You know, it feels like something's been ignited in the city right now. I hope this doesn't die down. I hope the fire keeps going, and I hope that people continue to stay woke and to stay active and to do whatever we have to do. Call your Congress people, write letters, vote.
This is Mark Taylor-Canfield, and this is the MTC Report. Thanks a lot for joining us this time and for checking out a lot of these different issues that are breaking in the news. And check back in with us again. Feel free to follow me at Twitter and Facebook. It's Twitter/M Taylor Canfield. That's my handle there. So check out my Twitter feeds and my global news feed, which is paper.li, free online newspaper. You can also hear me on the Jeff Santos Show, and please support the Jeff Santos Show. Go to his GoFundMe page and try to help find sponsors who will help keep that show in the air, because it's a really great example of progressive populism that is sorely needed in this country right now. He has great guests, wonderful guests, and great callers. Some of his guests are some of my favorite people, like Professor Robert Craig from Wisconsin Citizen Action, and all sorts of other folks you'll love. He had Tulsi Gabbard on there, and Nina Turner, and all sorts of really great, outspoken people. So check out the Jeff Santos Show on the RevolutionRadioNetwork.com and support him and send him some money, because he needs to stay on the air. Also, check out Democracy Watch News at Twitter and Facebook as well. Those are good sources for independent news coverage from around the world. There are bureaus all over the world covering news stories of a pro-democracy nature, pro-democracy movements especially. Also, I write at Daily Kos, so I have a blog there. And I'm a guest columnist at the Capitol Hill Times, so you can read my stuff online. And if you're interested in the Seattle $1 billion divestment from Wells Fargo, definitely go to Truthout and read my articles there. So stay strong, folks, and until next time, this is Mark Taylor-Canfield for the MTC Report.
The new president is a creep, and he should be held accountable for what he says.
The MTC Report. You got Trump.
And only 25% actually elected Trump. So between that and the Electoral College, it's very difficult to explain to people in other parts of the world that we have a democracy.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
MTC Report with Mark Taylor-Canfield.
We can reach equality. That's all I want to say. We can reach equality.
The MTC Report, the news behind the news with journalist Mark Taylor-Canfield. We offer you independent voices and underreported stories about topics you won't hear anywhere else. Join us as we delve into the deeper issues behind the news stories of the day on the MTC Report.